people always ask me, they'll say, well, why'd you change the names? I said, well, save Cypro and Amplifon, save Citizen, if you still ask me that.
That's a great question. We get the name all the time, and no, we are not a base-based organization.
Proprietary software that can help map the entire land area that we're looking at to basically look and see where the issues may be quicker, faster, and safer.
This is the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast with your host, Ryan Ray.
Welcome to another edition of the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect. As always, Ryan Ray here in the host seat. Thank you so much for tuning in. This show is the show we connect you with upstream, midstream, downstream, any part of the oil and gas business. We have on the folks who are making that happen. And as always, this show is brought to you by R Squared Global Engineering, Land Surveying, Right-of-Way, GIS. The good folks at R Squared Global can help you out, and you can find out more by going to GoR2.com. That's GoR2.com. After the show, be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn. We'll leave my profile in the show notes for you. Today, we have on Andy Lash, who is the Transportation Manager for Crude and LPG at Gemini Motor Transport, which is a Love's company. Is that the proper way to say that, Andy? How's it going today?
That's correct. I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. So we kind of threw me to a loop here when we had you on the show at loves.com. When you think of Loves, you think of, gas and snacks and showers and things like that. But kind of break down Gemini Motor Transport and being owned by Loves and just kind of how that works. And then we'll get into exactly what it is that you guys do as a Loves-owned company or a division of Loves, or however exactly that is played out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gemini is the primary service provider for Love's travel stops and country stores across the country, delivering most of the gasoline and diesel and the products that are sold there. And we operate a 100-truck crude fleet throughout Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, where we're servicing the oil and gas industry.
Okay. And so just out of curiosity, does Love's have other business units, or is this just their only kind of subset?
Yeah, so Love's owns several different businesses. There's the primary head of the company, which is Love's Travel Stops. We have Gemini Motor Transport, which I've already referenced. That's a 750 plus truck fleet throughout the country, operating in 40 different states. And then we've got Musket Corporation, which is the commodity sourcing, trading, and acquisition house, which handles a lot of the products that Gemini hauls and then sells through all the Love stores across the country. And then there's several more. Trillium CNG, which is a Love's owned company focused on CNG fueling and acquisition, and then they also build and maintain different CNG fueling stations across the country as well.
Okay, so that's fascinating. I did not even know that. I think of Love's as just a gas station truck stop. I had no idea that they were that expansive into the various things that they did. And so you're with Gemini. So was that its own entity, just to kind of understand how this ties in? Was that its own entity, or was it something that Love started as as kind of a business unit that it needed to service itself?
Yeah, back in November of 2000. They started Gemini because they saw the growing demand for the products that they were selling. They wanted to have more control and better focus delivering that product into each store. They started Gemini, and it's since continuing to grow and build year over year, where we went from a few trucks, like I said, starting in 2000 to now over 750 trucks nationwide, and an ever-increasing safety record, which we're very happy and proud of. We've got many different awards throughout this industry for top tier safety within our class, and continue to make strides to improve that every day.
Yeah, and you mentioned the amount of trucks, 750 trucks, and the website says 1,000 professional drivers. That's a lot of product that you guys are moving around. Obviously, on some level, we're assuming gasoline, but what all products are you guys moving in these trucks?
Yeah, of course, gasoline and diesel are the primary products. We also handle biodiesel, ethanol, DEF, crude, a wide spread of NGL products. We do run a 10-truck fleet of pressurized trailers in, like propane, butane, different products there. So it's a widespread of bulk liquid petroleum products.
And does Gemini, out of curiosity, just to kind of help me get a better picture of this, is Gemini a you may have said this, I missed it, but do y'all work exclusively for Loves, or do y'all sub out or are for hire for other companies as well?
Loves is by far our largest customer, but no, we operate for many other customers across the country, especially in the crude field and LPG field. That's almost exclusively third parties. We're dealing with a lot of the majors and super majors and midstream companies across the country, which, Loves isn't moving crude through their stores, of course. So.
Right. But it makes sense, though, to have a business unit that could service a crude a refining company or whatever the case may be, so that you can transport their crude, because you're going to ultimately buy the end product. So you can actually make money on both ends. So it's actually kind of a good way to double dip maybe from the same client.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that actually gets to happen. There's a lot of those refineries are a big piece in the middle of that we don't do today. But those relationships certainly help on both sides. We move a lot of refined products, of course, and try to, wherever possible, tie those relationships in on both sides, work through the upstream and downstream.
The trucking industry is fascinating to me because on the Texas Oil and Gas podcast, we've talked multiple times about stories that come out. There was a story last year, I think it was, that said, I can't remember who it was, but they said if you released all the convicts in the state of Texas, you could not fill all the trucking jobs. And that's obviously probably some hyperbole there, but the point they're getting at is that trucking is this industry that's ever growing. And I can't remember where I heard the statistic, and you might know this better than I do, but I heard a statistic the other day that that truck drivers is one of the, if not the biggest provider of jobs in the United States of America for maybe white males, or I can't remember what it was. There's a certain demographic that it really holds a substantial amount of the workforce are truck drivers, and I had no idea. You see them on the road, but you don't really account for how much of the labor force is driving trucks around.
Absolutely. I'm not sure the specific statistic that you're referring to, but it's very common that people don't understand how much every single thing you buy or need or use on any given day came on a truck. And we have people across the country. I think different places don't always look so kindly on truck drivers. They don't always have the best reputation out in the world. And I know we strive to improve that every day. We try to show people how great of an industry it can be. Little side note for me, I run a YouTube channel where I make training videos and different things like that, where we can expose people to, what a day in the life of hauling crude oil and hauling hazmat products out in the world really looks like, and get that education out there and try to get people into the jobs, into the really career jobs. I mean, you can drive for a long time. There's also a lot of pushback where people think that driving jobs are eventually going to go away because trucks are going to be automated and we're just not going to we're not going to need drivers eventually. And that's a very, very long ways off before that's going to happen. So it's still a very good career for a lot of people.
It's funny you brought that up. I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did, I did want to get there because there has been that talk about, hey, the death of the trucking industry. And, it's, to me, I'm glad you said that, because it seems to be overhyped. Yeah, maybe one day the trucks would eventually go away to self-drivers. But I'm not in the truck driving business, but I've driven a truck with a trailer, pickup truck with a trailer. I can't imagine driving an 18-wheeler with a big old trailer tied to the back of it. But all the little things that you have to do that you'd have to automate, especially when you're loading chemicals like this, and where it had to start and stop. It just seems that is a lot more hype than reality, that the truck driving jobs are going to go away. And as you mentioned, they are good jobs, and for the most part, they're stable jobs, because we got to have stuff transported from point A to point B. And whether it's gasoline or Amazon packages or whatever the case may be, Walmart goods, you've got to have someone in a big rig taking it from point A to point B. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think there's a lot of misconception, a lot of fear maybe right now that the truck driving jobs are going to go away. And the technology is nowhere near being there. And if you actually follow Elon Musk, you would probably figure out pretty quickly that most of his promises don't exactly hit the mark, to put it nicely.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around it. Something I try to follow closely. I was at a conference recently, and um, just one portion of the code that they have to think about is like the ethics that have to be coded into a truck that says, okay, we're going to have a collision. Do you take the collision or do you steer off into the sidewalk that might be populated with 20 people? And how do they code in the ethics into a machine to make that decision in a split second, right? A human
Right.
is going to do what they can, but how do you make the person that codes it, that tells the machine to do this? Things like that are a long ways off. And that's just one small piece to it.
Exactly. I'm sure you could list a bunch of things that I've never even considered, but that's a great point. And we know what would happen is that if something terrible like that did happen and it swerved off and it killed the 20 people, I'm pretty sure that would probably be the end of the automated truck driving right there, just because the public outcry would be like, oh my goodness, why did you do that when you could have just taken the collision? Because we all view computers doing stuff terrible a lot differently than we do when a human messes up and makes a mistake. Okay, let's don't focus on the negative. Truck driving jobs are good jobs. They're important jobs, especially here in the oil and gas. As the oil and gas industry goes, the truck driving industry seems to follow along. From a number standpoint, not necessarily breaking down in the weeds, but I'm sure right now you guys are experiencing either growth or at a kind of a high point over the last couple of years with these high oil prices. Not only demand for gasoline has gone up, I'm sure, like in West Texas, but transporting gasoline or crude oil from different spots around the country as well.
Yeah, driver demand is up across the board. We're just fighting every day to get the best candidates possible and compete not just within the oil and gas sector, but Walmart and Amazon and all these huge freight companies, and they're seeing the tightening of that driver pool just as much as we are. So it's getting extremely competitive. The oil and gas sector has a difficult history to sometimes get through. I know you talk about it a lot on your podcasts, and it's no secret to the oil and gas. We live in a boom bust kind of cycle, and the same thing ripples through to the drivers that we have. And we bring them on strong and heavy, and then arbs change and things change, and we go back the other way. So that's something that we're constantly trying to compete with as well, and come up with creative solutions to maybe keep drivers' pay fairly consistent through the downturns as much as it is through the big booms, and try to work through that. And that's how we've we're still working to figure it out completely, but something we focus on to try to increase that stability for these guys that they just see huge money and all these numbers getting thrown around, and we have to compete with that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because as someone who has a oil and gas service company myself, when the numbers get crazy, the employees, and I understand, I'm a free market guy, so I understand the employees sitting there saying, "Hey, I could go make $5, $10, $20 an hour, or get a $20,000 sign-on bonus." I understand all that, but there also are real repercussions to that, which is when the downturn happens, you find out that if let's just use round numbers here, you're making $10 an hour, now you're making $20 an hour. That $20 an hour salary is no longer attainable, or that $20,000 sign-on bonus that goes away. And so I don't have a problem people getting it, but also it does seem to have this lingering effect in the downturn. It kind of hurts you a little bit more, because then your budget, your livelihood is built off of something that's those numbers aren't sustainable anymore. But with that being said, I think to your point about education and stuff, one of the things that we've tried to point out on the show, on the Textile Guest podcast, I'm assuming your references, is that these are types of jobs that we need. These are good jobs. These are good paying jobs. And obviously myself, I think that one of the things that we have to be careful of in America is becoming degree snobs or professional service jobs. And jobs like these are vital to the economy. They're vital to daily living. And I joke with people all the time. I always say that, what I do in oil and gas is save lives. And I joke, and they say, well, how so? I'm like, well, when that helicopter is delivering your heart, because you need a heart transplant, or, taking you on life flight, that oil and gas came from a well that we staked, or a pipeline that we surveyed, or something like that, kind of making a joke. But there's some truth in that. And obviously the same thing is true with what you guys do on some level. The economy and our livelihoods, even the helicopter fuel comes from one of your trucks. And so How do we bring better awareness that it's not just it's not a bad job, it's a good job, it's a stable job, and even during a downturn, if Love's or whoever is working on gas has to cut off, you can go to Target or FedEx or whoever else has these type of jobs, JB Hunt, whatever it is. So it's a job that's transferable as well. How do we do a better job of educating people?
I think we need to be very honest when people come into the industry. Quite often, we get people that oil and gas is not always produced in the most populous areas, right? West Texas, we've mapped out home addresses for our employees, and there's just like nobody that lives in West Texas. They're from all over the country, and they're coming to the oil and gas for this big money, which is great, and that's what we want them to be able to provide for their families. But we also want them to be realistic with those expectations. We want them to understand how the industry works and make sure that they're well educated on many parts, not just the safety, not just how to do the job and be successful, but what to expect, how this industry works long term, and that it is stable. Something that we're very proud of with Gemini and Loves is that we do have a very large company behind us. We only operate 100 trucks in the crude industry, which is can be small to some of our other competitors, but that's still a very large fleet. And then we also have another 650 trucks within the refined service. So if we have a downturn on crude, we have refined service trucks. Loves does tire care service. They retread their own tire trucks. We haul those tires all over the country. I mean, there's a lot to fall back on through those ups and downs, and that's happened a couple times over the 6 years that I've been in this position. And we had the last big fallout through the last big downturn. We lost some work. We were able to move guys around, and we didn't lose anybody. I think we lost maybe one employee out of 30 drivers worth of work. And that's something that you don't hear about that. When you hear about industry news and things like that. And it might not always be great, but it's a stable job. It's a good job. It's fairly straightforward. You have to do it safely. You have to do it correctly and follow the procedures. And I think it just comes down to communication and being honest. I think another part of driving jobs is it is so competitive that there is a lot of, empty promises sometimes that, some other carriers can make, and different things throughout the industry that we're always trying to make sure we're not falling into those kind of situations, and just being very upfront, honest, communicating, providing training to everybody, and keeping everybody up to date.
So I've tried to ask this question to everyone. I don't know if I can word it properly for you, but you can help me out here, I'm sure. I always ask questions basically before you start a project. What are some of the things that you like to advise clients on that might seem small at the beginning, but at the end they kind of blow up and could be big deals if I take care of? Maybe from a logistics standpoint or HR standpoint, I'll let you kind of take that however you want to, or you might have a straightforward answer. But what are some of the things that you guys really try to focus on, either early on with the training or when you're trying to get product to a store? What are some of the things that you guys have noticed? You said, what, we really need to tackle these things, because if not, 6 months down the road, we could have a big issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been listening to your podcast. I'm thinking through those as I was expecting this question, and specifically for the oil and gas portion of our business is looking at the different offloads, the different changes to the oil and gas production schedules. A lot of what we haul comes down to a flowback, brand new well type of situation where it's a roll of the dice. They don't know exactly how much it's going to produce. They don't know when exactly it's going to start producing that oil. And you have to be prepared for either side. It could make way more oil than you thought it was, and you need way more truck time and capacity. Right. And then you also have arbitrages that can change very quickly. I mean, we see a little bit of a downturn in trucking in West Texas right now because dramatic arbitrage closed between West Texas and Houston. And the statistics I've heard there is about 1,200 trucks went from a long haul situation to a short haul situation and kind of flooded the market. So you have to be able to adapt to things like that. So when we're talking to customers, they need to have more than one offload. They can't expect all their volume to go to one single pipeline station and expect it to stay up 24/7, 365. They have to have contingencies. And then you also have to be very honest with your operations. I know many customers that we have wait time and demurrage on trucks, no matter what trucking industry you're in, whether it's sand or water or oil. The demurrage time on trucks, if that can stack up very quickly, and you can end up having a lot of unexpected charges at the end of a month that if you weren't kind of staying in front of that.
Okay, good deal. We will. Well, basically, first, is there anything that we did not discuss about Gemini or Loves that you wanted to hit before we wrap this up here?
I think we covered everything. Yeah. No.
Okay, so we're going to link to it in the show notes. It's a little bit of a long URL, so we'll link to it, but it's at the Loves website. So loves.com is where you can find Gemini support. They also have a LinkedIn page, which is linkedin.com/company/Gemini Motor Transport is that. So we'll link to those two things in the show notes so the listeners can go and find it. Is there anywhere else you want to point listeners to, or things that you want to make them aware of that maybe Gemini or Loves has, social media, stuff like that you might want to point them towards?
I think the one thing I'd like to point out is just my YouTube channel.
Yeah, sure.
It's got a lot of information about the industry and the work that we do. That's available to anybody out there. They can kind of see what goes into hauling a load of crude oil, the different safety concerns and the equipment. I've heard from many customers that they've found value in that, and it gave them some insight into what goes on out in the field every day.
Okay, and it looks like if you just go to Google and search Andy Lash, that's Lash, and put YouTube behind it, Andy Lash YouTube, it is the first hit here. So Andy Lash YouTube, and there is your YouTube page. Awesome. Well, thank you for doing that. That is a nice service to provide for the folks who are curious, and it gives you the ability to connect with people on a one-to-one basis. Andy, thank you so much for your time today and what you guys do over at Loves. We really appreciate it. Anything else before we get you out of here?
No, thank you. Thank you very much for the time.